edition of Cheers to Careers. I'm Steve Ridinghouse, the Career Outreach Coordinator at the School of Journalism and Mass Communications at KU. Hello, we are back for another episode of Cheers to Careers. I'm Steve Ridinghouse, Outreach Coordinator for the KU School of Journalism and Mass Communications. This is our 82nd episode, the first virtual trip to Idaho to visit with Shaun Goodwin, the Boise State athletics reporter. Welcome, Shaun.
Yeah, Steve, appreciate it. It's been about 5 years now since I graduated from KU, so it's still good to be in touch with you guys.
Yeah, it's hard to believe. I remember you well from your time at KU. I know you're involved with sports coverage, and I think your senior year, you're the editor of the Daily Stanton. So what have you been doing for the last 5 years? I know the last three have been in Idaho.
Yeah, a little bit all over the place. Obviously, COVID right after I graduated kind of threw a wrench into things. But yeah, graduated from KU in May 2019, and I freelanced for the Kansas City Star for about a year and a half, I guess. I think I was freelancing before I graduated as well. But I covered professional soccer for the Star for a good couple of years. And then, yeah, like you said, Steve, in basically, I arrived in Idaho January 2nd, 2022. Started a good job back in Kansas. I did a week remote right after Christmas. So yeah, been working here now for about 3 years.
And I noticed I think you started as a service journalism reporter, and you're recently transitioned more to a kind of a sports specific role. Was that a pretty smooth transition for you?
Honestly, I'd say it was difficult for about 6 months or so. My whole time at KU, I started journalism as a sophomore, and literally week number two of being in J101, I became a sports reporter, and that's all I did from 19 years old until I was 25. And yeah, I did service journalism, which now it's about a 3-year-old position. I think different newspapers are starting to catch on to what it is. But when I started the position, it was new, and it's essentially it's like service journalism. It's finding those stories in the community, whether it's breaking news, and we can answer questions people have. Um, Scouring social media, looking for store questions people are asking, and how can we answer them. But to get to your question, Steve, yeah, I did sports for years, and all of a sudden I was dealing with court documents and breaking news, and doing follow-up stories after there's been homicide, and it was just a completely held for me, and it took about 6 months for me to kind of get into the groove of things.
And you talked about, starting in sports your sophomore year, because I think I remember looking back at your farewell column from your senior year. You started as a pre-med and psychology major. You
Yeah.
realized that might not be the best fit for me. So kind of walk me through how that quick transition to sports happened.
Yeah, so back in high school, I was in my AP Bio, AP Chem, and I was interested in psychology. And it's always one of those things. If my parents never pressured me, but it's more of I want to impress my parents and do well by that. So I go to KU for pre-med. My first semester, I took a few of the freshman seminars, exploring Mars, a couple of my easier math classes. And then second semester, it was 8 a.m. every day, Bio 150 and Chem 130. And I quickly realized that wasn't for me. So yeah, by March, I kind of figured I didn't want to do this anymore, but I'd never done journalism either. But I was always good at writing and reading. I was in AP English in high school. So I was like, heck, I'll give journalism a go. Enrolled in J101 again. Wasn't really sure where this was going. It was my only journalism class I took. And Christian Hardy was the sports editor at the time, and a few other guys, or a few other people came into the class and was like, yeah, we're looking for writers. I needed something to do. Just being a sports reporter sounded fun. But as it is with the Kansan, I started off doing columns, and got to dip my toes into reporting on swimming, dive and stuff. But I never expected it at that point to turn into where we are now, and it just kind of snowballed.
And I would think the role Boise State, I mean, they're well known. I mean, especially for football. I mean, they've had a lot of attention. I'm trying to remember what year that was when they played Oklahoma in that bowl game. It seemed like that was kind of when they
Mhm.
arrived. It looks like you take pride in kind of doing the more than just kind of the game stories. I mean, I was looking at some of your online stories. I know you just did something on NIL
Mhm.
recently. I mean, is that taking a lot of your time? I mean, doing stories like that, kind of behind the scenes.
It's definitely a balance. I've had some late nights recently, where yeah, it's Boise State football right now. They're number 12 in the country. Good chance of going to the playoffs. There's a lot of attention on the team, and covering a college team. Even when I was doing KU football, KU basketball, like there was a couple of press conferences a week for basketball. I didn't do football as much at KU, but here at Boise State, there's a press conference 4 days a week. Basketball just started, so there's a couple of basketball press conferences. And yeah, there's a lot more of there's the day-to-day stuff of who they're playing and smaller stories about certain athletes and that kind of rounding up coverage. But yeah, like you said, Steve, more of those feature stories of looking into I wrote last week about a German Ukrainian recruit who he doesn't arrive here for about another year, but I did a big feature on him and NIL stuff, and I've done stories with the volleyball team and whatnot, and it's definitely it can be a bit of a workload at times. So I think that just kind of comes with the job. And when I applied for this position for Boise State Athletics, I was told for the busy season of August through March, I might be doing 50 plus hour weeks, and then life will kind of calm down a bit once we get out of basketball season.
And do you have a lot of control over the content you write about, or does somebody assign you what to do, or do you get to kind of dictate what stories you want to do day to day?
Full control. I mean, obviously, my editors will suggest stories. Jim Keys, my sports editor, he comes to the home football games. He'll be helping with story ideas and whatnot. But when we're going through the week, I'm showing up to the press conferences every day and showing up to player availability every day. I get the quotes I want, the stories I want, and I can write the stories I want. And obviously, there are editors and everything else. But as for what I'm writing about, I'm pretty much given full autonomy.
Okay. What about your time at KU? How well did that prepare you for what you're doing now? I mean, do you feel like you came in with a good foundation and the skills needed?
Yeah, I mean, I'll always hype up KUJ school. And I've spoken to a few years ago, I had an old neighbor who was looking to go to J school and stuff, and I've always said, I can't speak specifically to other schools like your Mizzou's and Syracuse's, and you probably have a better idea than me, Steve. But from what I've heard, it felt like those places, obviously great schools for journalism, a little bit more regimented. Like, this year you'll do this, and this year you'll do this. I feel like for KU, I mean, heck, I came in, as a sophomore, and by my junior year, I was sports editor, covering basketball. I was working with Griffin Hughes and Nick Cousin with doing broadcast stuff. I had my podcast doing about soccer for a while. I mean, KU basically just gave me every tool and opportunity I wanted to do. It was like if you want to put in the time and do stuff out of class, KU was going to let me. Where I felt like some other schools I've kind of heard that might not be so much the case. So yeah, whether it's podcasting, appearing on TV, writing about, I mean, I think I covered literally every sport possible at KU. Um, that all helped, to create me to be a better writer, a better reporter, but also just the comfort level to, like we were saying, with service journalism. I was going into a completely new world of breaking news and court documents and court cases, and I at least feel like everything I did at KU at least made me prepared for entering that world.
And are you doing much with do you have time to do any sort of multimedia work right now, or is it pretty much writing? I mean, do you do any podcasting, video work or anything like that?
So I'd say it's 85% writing. Podcasting, it's typically I'll do radio or podcast work if someone else invites me on. Again, especially with Boise State doing so well. I've been typically doing maybe one a week of, I was on the radio in San Diego last week because they were playing San Diego State. Um, Otherwise, for videos, again, the press conferences, I have, the phone stands. I'll take videos of press conferences. I'll cut up the most interesting segments. Just a 90-second clip of, a couple of interesting answers a player may have had. And then I'll send that over to our video editor, which we're lucky enough to have two photographers and video people. And, they'll put on the labels and the blow effects and everything else. And then I get to use those videos for my story. So it's absolutely essential. I'm still thinking about the social media or the multimedia side of things. I'm just fortunate enough to have people around me who can kind of take some of that pressure off my plate, do the hard work for me, and then give me back a video for me to just attach to a story.
What do you remember about that? Your 1 year, I guess your senior year as editor, was that a tough transition? I mean, were you going into that position very confident, or what was kind of your expectation in that role?
Yeah, I will say I was surrounded by a really strong group of people as well at the time. I had Savannah Smith as my managing editor, who she went on to become editor after me, and she's gone on. She's been doing great things with the Sacramento Bee she's at right now. Like Laura Corsi and Connor Mitchell and Nicole Asbury. So I was really fortunate in that I felt like my role as editor was to um to make sure the newspaper was hitting the goals that we wanted to hit and to be, the projects we wanted to do in the special sections. We were dealing with student status and the funding issue while I was there. But I was very lucky to have very news savvy people around me to kind of take off that pressure as well.
I know you've touched on going to press conferences quite a bit. Do you remember that Bill Self press conference where he appreciated your accent? Does that come up from time to time?
It comes up fairly often. When I first applied for this job, I was chatting to my editor about it, and apparently he'd already seen the video when I first came as the Statesman. I guess he reached out to Rob Carloff, and Rob had sent it over to chat. So it comes up now and again. I actually, Boise State's basketball coach Leon Rice. We had our first press conference with him today, and he guessed I was Australian. So not quite. He wasn't quite there, but coaches always. Well, you can tell whenever people hear me for the first time, especially around football and basketball. You can tell they have to lock in a little bit more, and you can tell it confuses them a little bit.
Because you were born in Liverpool, but you grew up, I think what you said, like 14,
Mm.
at the school in Overland Park.
Yeah, yeah. I born and raised in Liverpool, England. Moved out to Kansas City, Overland Park when I was 14. My dad's job, nothing super exciting. Uh, but yeah, I arrived 10 days before my freshman year of high school at Blue Valley Northwest. So that was a blast, going from like preppy English school with the school uniforms to 1800 students high school and the pep rallies and people actually caring about school sports and school spirit and everything else. So yeah, that was a quite the introduction to American life for me. But yeah, went to Blue Valley Northwest all 4 years, went to KU all 4 years, and yeah, here we are.
And before I move on to our Fast Five, what kind of tips would you have for, say, those young reporters, those sports reporters that are trying to do what you want to do? I mean, what should they know now?
Honestly, I just say if you love doing this job and if you have a goal in mind of what you want to do, really just just stick it out. Um, I mean, my story, I moved into this Boise State position about 2.5 months ago. And I've only just reached the goal I wanted to reach after graduating college, and it's taken me 5 years. I graduated college, I freelanced for the Star for a couple of years. That was great. No positions were open for me that I wanted uh, when I was turning 26 and had to get health insurance, or 26, 27, had to get health insurance and everything else. And that's how I ended up in Idaho for a service journalism job. And yeah, I did it for almost 3 years. And I applied for a couple of different positions out of Boise, went through interview processes, didn't get a job. And I would say over this past summer, I was feeling a little disenfranchised. And, I've been doing something I didn't want to do for the last 2.5 years. But at the end of the day, I just stuck it out and out of the blue, really, the Boise State reporter, announced him and his family were moving to California, and suddenly here was my opportunity. Took it, and I couldn't be happier where I am right now. And yeah, there were some tough times. I didn't want to get out of sports, and I was out of sports for too long. And honestly, I thought I might not have a path back to sports, but just stuck with it. And thankfully for me, it all worked out for the best just because I persisted, kept doing good journalism, kept honing my craft. And yeah, it's a tough industry to get into, especially, if you have a specific goal in mind. And I just say stick with it. At 22, 23, it may seem like a lot. But I turned 28 just last week, and I'm happy here and I'll do what I'm doing. So that's my advice.
So your goal was to always cover college sports. That was
College
kind of
sports, professional sports again, maybe, in 10 years, I'm a soccer guy. If there was an opportunity to cover Major League Soccer or something, of course, I'd love to jump at that opportunity. But at least college sports. I covered high school in Kansas City. I loved high school. But I think it's just something different about covering college sports where I wanted to at least be here.
awesome. Great advice. I love to hear that. Okay, so it's time for a quick fast five. So how many other British accents have you found in Boise in addition to yourself? Are there any other British accents you've met?
Not in the industry, unfortunately. I've bumped into a couple of guys who live here um, through watching soccer. Big Liverpool fan. I have a local bar I go to, and they'll show the games for me. And then Boise, we do have an Air Force base about 45 minutes south. So sometimes we'll get regiments and people from England staying for a week or two. And I'll bump into them because, again, they're watching soccer on the weekends. But yeah, we're few and far between.
How many recreational soccer teams or leagues are in Boise? Do they play soccer in Boise? Any rec?
Yeah, I know there's a lot actually. There's indoor and outdoor leagues. I've played both of them. I've dropped off recently just because of being how busy I am. But yeah, no, they have under 30s, under 40s, men's, women's, several different levels for each group. Like soccer it's growing quickly in Boise.
One more soccer question. I think we're 20 months from the World Cup being in North America. Who's your
Yeah.
early pick to win the 26 World Cup? You got any inside information?
England, of course.
England?
No, if I'm being completely serious, it's a long way away, but you have to look at the likes of Spain, Italy, Germany, France. But England will be in there. USA, it's on home soil. I won't count the US out of it.
Are you hoping to catch the game, or will that fit in your schedule at all?
Yeah, especially with it being over the summer. It's typically football's not getting crazy with forming until August. So yeah, I'd love to get back to Kansas City and catch a game at Arrowhead at the very least. Or if not that, I'm close to Lumen Field up in Seattle.
Speaking of soccer in Kansas City, I was just told, didn't you score the winning goal in like the Sporting KC media 1 year?
Yeah,
Research
yeah.
department, my research department just set me off on that.
I've got a video. I'll send it to you. But yeah, no, it was a Sporting KC media game, and I scored.
How far was that shot out? Was that a big
It
time?
was yeah, it was about from 15, 16 yards out. It was
Wow.
a pretty good goal. Yeah, my mum was in the trials and she got it on film, so yeah.
So, what was your favorite story you wrote while you were a member of the Daily Kansas staff? Is there one story that really jumped out?
Um, oh boy, I mean, like, I had a lot of good stories I wrote. I'd say the two things that really stuck out to me. was the triple homicide on Mass Street, which would have been, oh boy, 2017. Me, Griffin Hughes, and your cousin, we all, the three of us, went out there right after it happened, and we were out there till 5, 6 in the morning, getting as much information as we could. Uh, Obviously, that was a very impactful story that I was proud to be a part of and just jump on. But for sports releases, I I remember doing a little bit of an investigative piece with the rowing team, how a bunch of players were suspended for having Thinksters, the fake Instagram accounts. And they were scared to talk because they were scared of being kicked off the team, but they didn't think it was fair. And, I got to chat to a couple of players off the record. Um, Gave KU a chance to comment. He didn't. But yeah, no, and that story did really well. It was picked up nationally by, like a rowing community, I guess. But just, being able to, it felt like the girls on that team, they didn't really know where to turn, and they were being told they weren't allowed to play for the team, and threats of scholarships being taken away. So being able to kind of expose that story, I do look fondly back on that.
And last question, I mean, being from Liverpool, what's your favorite Beatles song?
Eleanor Rigby.
Oh, good choice.
Yeah, yeah. I feel like it's not a common choice people pick, but something about it just speaks to me.
Awesome. Well, hey, Shaun, I know you have a busy schedule. Always like to say cheers to your careers. Thanks for joining us from Idaho. And next time you're back in Kansas, make sure you drop by and see us.
I will appreciate it, Steve.